Welcome back to the channel, Travis Brown Coaching. If you're new here, I am Travis Brown and we specialize in body transformations and performance coaching. And what we do is we take people through the worlds of evolving their body, losing fat, building their confidence and understanding they can do anything that they want. And then we'll take them into our Excel program where they'll take on 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, Hyroxes, and even triathlons, anything up to powerlifting and even bodybuilding competitions. So that's what we do. And today's episode is all about how to prepare for your first Hyrox. Now, this is an ever-growing format. There's a lot of new people to it. There's a lot of veterans. And also, more importantly, there'll be lots of things that add confusion and conflict to kind of your preparation if you're new. So something that I wish I had been told and something like that at the start is the whole point of the episode this week. We're going to show you snippets of what the venues look like and the arenas. So like you'll see race layouts, rules, and we're going to cover some of that stuff. And I just think actually, although Hyrox do a very good job of promoting this stuff, publishing this stuff, I think still there's a gap in the market for understanding what it looks like from a participant's first time. So whilst we're not necessarily going to be walking around the venues explaining everything, I'm going to show you some examples of some maps, understanding the race format, how we might train for it, how we might prepare for it mentally, nutritionally, and ultimately how to get your best result. Because for some people that are watching this video, you'll be doing it for the first time and you'll have no interest in the time that you want. And there'll be some people that even though it might be their first time, they're looking to PB or gain some tips. Now, my background in Hyrox is that I took it on by chance, by an accident. It was never part of the intentions. It was a conversation with a client at the time where we spoke about, the possibility of what this Hyrox thing is. We decided to do it. 5 or 6 of us signed up for the first one just as a coaching group. And honestly, I thought because I can run and I wasn't running very well at the time, and I go to the gym that I would be fine. And that actually wasn't the case for what I wanted to get out of it. Now, the beauty of Hyrox, of course, is that it's called the fitness race for everyone. And that's absolutely what it is. But if you want to go and do very well based on a certain time, just because you can run and just because you lift some weights is not going to prepare you for Hyrox. So that's a really important part. Is like work out what do you want to get out of this race day? What do you want to get out of this event in order to go and feel accomplished and like it was worth it. So what is it? So if you're unfamiliar, it's a combination of running and functional exercises. So it's 8 1-kilometer runs. After each kilometer run, that will be followed by a different workout station. So skier, sled push, sled pull, vertical jumps, rower, farmer's carries, sandbag lunges, and wall balls. So it's very much a full body workout. It tests your strength, it tests your endurance, it tests your explosiveness, and more importantly for most, it will test your mental toughness. So if you're planning to tackle it and you need to know exactly what you're getting into, this is exactly what it's going to look like. So the races itself will have a format. Now, this is usually indoor. There are some outdoor like Auckland and Berlin, but this is indoor. There will be a certain number of laps you do. Usually the first one will either be longer or shorter than the 2 to 8 based on the circuit because of where the start zone is. You'll do the run, you'll go into the skier. There's a transition zone between each run lap and each station, which are highlighted clearly by balloons, like balloon arches. You'll have rocks in. Now, one thing that we didn't account for when we were first training is that there is a transition zone. That rock zone is where people come in from the lap and then make their way to whatever station. In between those 2 arches is when you're in the rock zone, which is your transition zone. Your time is still going up. So that is still part of the race and you still kind of get a score on that rock zone of how quickly you go through it. So important that you remember that in your racing sort of strategy. And then from there, it's all about focusing on your strengths and your weaknesses, which sounds silly, but for some people, you're a runner. Focusing on your running, getting best at your running and still trying to not be as bad at the stations is just as good of a strategy as someone who's very, very strong, who's going to smash the stations and maybe worry less about their running speed. I, myself, am a runner and I run fast. My runs are always above average. My fastest laps are always really high up. My run total is all very high up in ranking. But ultimately on the stations, I'm quite average, I would say. So how do you train for a Hyrox? It's unique and people are still working out how to do this. So whether it's endurance running, functional strength, however it is, people have different strategies. Now, the first things that I always focus on when working with people is, for most people that come into Hyrox for the first time, believe it or not, they're usually new to running or they're starting up their running. So the first things first is actually, how do we build in the run? And the best way to do this is 2 to 3 runs per week. One of them being endurance runs, so longer runs. I think for most people, they should be comfortably running 10 to 12K by the time they compete in Hyrox, maybe more. The second one is like a tempo run, where you're still going to be on your feet for a long time, but you're varying the pace. So that might be a 2K warm-up, 1K fast, 1K slow, 4 or 5 times, followed by a 2K cool down. It's really important that you're going through that transition, that body's ability to go fast back into slow, fast back into slow. And it's part of Hyrox racing is actually your ability to switch from aerobic endurance to anaerobic endurance, which is aerobic is with oxygen and anaerobic is without. You might see a pattern in Hyrox where lots of people that are very good at it have done team sports before because of the style of training. So particularly think football, say rugby, basketball, netball, it's very quick, it's very start and then it's stop and you're walking. And Hyrox is a bit similar to that, although you're not walking. Some of those sled pushes are going to be very anaerobic. You're going to be holding your breath, you're going to be going for it guns, but technically your runs are going to act as almost a recovery. So your ability to push and pull back those paces is going to be particularly important. And then the other runs is anything like threshold intervals. So we don't need to go flat out at 10 seconds or something like that, but actually really pushing your heart rates up to the 160, 170 zones and running as fast as you can for 2, 3, 4 minutes, and then having a nice long rest and then repeating that will also be really beneficial for your fitness systems and also your belief and ability to run as fast as you possibly can for that time. Then we're going to need some functional strength workouts. Now, everyone dives very quickly into Hyrox-specifics, but I think, to be honest, that's the last thing to add. If you improving your running, we need to think about the major muscle groups. Now, within Hyrox is full body, so you need to be able to push, you need to be able to pull, you need to be able to squat, you need to be able to lunge, you need to be able to shoulder press, you need to be able to row. So ultimately, we need to build a strength workout, a functional strength workout, incorporating those exercises. But it doesn't always have to be, I'm going to do a sled pull, so practice sled pull. If you get really strong at a bent over row, that's going to benefit your sled pull. If you get really strong at single leg squats, lunges, split squats, leg presses, that's going to really help you in your sled push. If you get very, very strong at lunging, then obviously that's going to help you lunging, wall ball thrusters. So building strength workouts that actually work those muscles in a way that actually goes far beyond the Hyrox race. Because otherwise you'll just get stuck on doing the same weight. So you still need to improve your strength of your legs, your pulling muscles, your biceps, etc. And then the last part, and it's probably the smallest part, which I recommend people only do 1 or 2 a week, maybe max, is actually the Hyrox-specific. Now, one thing we can do in our functional strength workouts is you can incorporate the erg, so using rowers and skiers as a warm-up, particularly if you're not competent or confident on them. But then after that, your Hyrox-specific usually will be something that's a bit like an AMRAP or 45, 60 minutes of intensity that's actually integrating those exercises. So for me, it's 2 to 3 runs per week, 2 to 3 functional strength workouts, incorporating strength movements, and then 1 to 2 Hyrox-specific sessions per week will be your training strategy. And then obviously closer to the time, then you'll just tailor it down or adapt based on where you're improving or where you're not. Now, the other one that often gets ridiculed, I think, in the Hyrox space is fuel, is nutrition. And it's just as important as your training. So particularly for people that are first time, it doesn't necessarily mean you're racing to be the best person on the track, but we all want to do well. And also Hyrox can be a really good way for us to get into optimal shape, performance, and actually just feeling our best. So there's a couple of things that people need to do when they're going to Hyrox training. A lot of people will probably, especially watching this, possibly still be on a fat loss journey, trying to change their shape, but ultimately will then undo their training. So carbs are your friend. You're going to need energy for those longer runs and intense workouts. Making sure you're getting enough carbs, oats, rice, sweet potatoes, rice cakes, energy gels particularly can be important, especially if you're going to get used to using them for race day. Hydrate. A lot of people don't do this. When you start sweating more, you think you only replace water, but staying hydrated is key, especially since Hyrox is a lot of sweat. You use a lot of salt, sodium. You ever see those white grainy bits on your skin? You need to replace those. So electrolytes are going to become very important for you maintaining the balance of your muscles and therefore your fitness. Race day fuel, making sure you're practicing your pre-race meal during training. So different races are different categories. Quite often men's open is early, men's pro is later. Women's open will be mid-afternoonish, depending on the day. focusing on building your nutrition and your training and your lifestyle around that will be very, very important for the way you feel, and also your stomach getting used to it so you can start to get it right for when you go and race. So something that gives you energy, something that doesn't upset your stomach, and something you're quite comfortable making, consuming, possibly on the go or without much prep. Mindset is such a key part here. So, you know, you need to talk about the mindset. Hyrox isn't just a physical challenge, it's mental too. There will be moments where you're exhausted, you think you can't keep going, but you can, or you don't think you can achieve that. And primarily, I think most people have this through their training, where training feels really hard. They might not feel like they're getting anywhere. But through a training block on something like Hyrox is actually you're just building and building and building fatigue. And therefore, training is always hard to deal with. Like, it makes it more tricky to balance. It makes it more difficult to manage. So ultimately, you're going to have to make sure you're working on that mindset, breaking it down in training, one session at a time, one day at a time, but also on race day. Run 1, station 1 in the skier, run 2. You don't need to worry about the wall balls before you've got to the wall balls. And that's easier said than done. But the more you break it down in training, and the more you break it down in your race, the easier it is to push through those stations and not worry about the next and tackle that obstacle as it comes. And also, again, a bit wishy-washy, but positive self-talk. Remind yourself why you're doing it. Remind yourself that you're putting in the hard work. Remind yourself what you signed up for. And trust in your training, trust in your process. And particularly if you've got a coach or get a coach, trust in them to get you ready. Follow the plan, take it day by day, and you'll be in a wonderful spot.
Trav, come on.
And then kind of one of the last key things is race day strategy. So how do you make sure everything goes smoothly? First of all, make sure you pack your everything the night before you leave. Race shoes, race outfit, nutrition, chewing gum, always recommended, because the arenas are often very dry, get a dry mouth, so chewing gum can be really helpful. Water, any caffeine, any stimulant, anything that you take before race, in a bag, laid out on the bed, make sure you've got everything and pack it before you need to leave. Make sure you arrive early, give yourself enough time to check in, warm up and get familiar with the race like setup arena, but try your very best not to get there too early. Like, I think an hour and a half is great before start time. Give yourself that time to check in, walk around a little bit, settle, bags away, go warm up, which then takes warm up, focus on dynamic movements, get your heart rate up and muscles warm. Make sure you get your heart rate up. Otherwise, it's going to hit you like a ton of bricks when you go out on that first lap. A good warm-up will help you prevent the injury, but it will also get you in the best shape, mindset, mental, some strides on the treadmill, some strokes on the skier and the rower, and some bounding and some stretching. I personally don't ever touch the sleds and the weights because they all feel different depending on race venue, race lane, everything. I don't touch them. They're going to be heavy regardless. You've done enough in training. Trust your training. Up to you. Some people do. I don't do that. Make sure you pace yourself. Don't start too fast. If you can't handle it, if you can't start the race and get to the skier first, then don't be trying. It's tempting. You'll be buzzing. You'll be energetic. But it's a long race and it's about managing your energy. And I've seen too many people fall off a cliff, kind of come after the second or third station. I've done it to myself, both on my first race and on a race where I was chasing a PB. I started too fast. I tried to win. I tried to beat this guy, Mark Dean. Most of you will have heard of him. He set the British record on that race day. By the time I got off the sled push, which is technically 4 out of 16 things, I was done and I couldn't hack it. So just make sure you pace yourself. Don't ruin your race. Make sure you use mental focus. I do this a lot. Visualize each station going well. That's important, going well. You've trained for it. Trust yourself, one station at a time. Everyone will struggle. You'll run past people that are going slower than you and you'll have people run past you that go faster than you. That's fine. Don't worry about it. It's your race, particularly your first one. So that's it, guys. If you follow these tips, you'll be set up for success at your first Hyrox event. It is a challenging race. It's incredibly rewarding. Crossing that finish line always feels amazing. So if you found it helpful, make sure you give us a like. Make sure you subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe for more fitness tips, race preparation advice, fat loss, etc. And let me know any comments or questions for prepping for your first Hyrox. The next episode will actually be episode 1 of Road to Bilbao. So documenting that journey over to Bilbao, where the goal is to go and get sub 60. So make sure you subscribe, follow me along, and we will document that whole weekend as well and all the way up to it.